Thank you for coming to the session on curriculum development and its role in student gameplay. There are many visions of anti-violence learning resources emerging in an increasingly interconnecting world. In this context, it appears apt to ask the question, what do teachers and teacher educators need to know, and what resources do they need in order to actively build community among teachers and teacher educators around the world? Innovative educational strategies which recognize the changing world we live within and engage young people in creating norms that address intersectional inequalities, support nonviolence, promote social responsibility, and foster equitable relationships are crucial if we are to achieve lasting change. The developed curriculum offers a participatory and collaborative approach to co-creating globally relevant and inclusive learning activities that teachers and teacher educators can use to engage young people with challenging gender-based violence constructively. The learning design is situated in a vision of global teacher education that embeds the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, in short, SDGs. For example, situated in the principles of SDGs 3, 4, and 5, we focus on the holistic development of young people, the enhancement of their skills, knowledge, attitudes, and capability, rooted in their lived experience, for the prevention of abusive behavior in relationships in the UK, associated with the British Relationship, Sex and Health Education, RSHE, and Personal, Social and Health Education, PSHE, statutory guidance. I framed the design of these activities in a scheme of work that can accompany the use of the video game Danielle in secondary schools and also be flexibly adapted as standalone education for social justice resources by educators and teacher educators nationally and globally, which will be available to download for free from the None and Three website. I developed the scheme of work between January 2020 and January 2022 through an iterative process of stakeholders consultation to ensure that the activities were transferable, sustainable, replicable, adaptable, and maintained purposeful context relevance for educators and teacher educators. The scheme of work activities are cost effective and rooted in democratic and social justice principles that are centered on strengthening the voice, visibility, and agency of young people in an empowering and enabling process of learning. The objective is to contribute to conditions for teacher education and education to develop an inclusive, equitable, ethical provision of teaching practice in a safe and boundaried learning process. The methodological approach taken for the creation of curriculum consists of, as mentioned before, an iterative and collaborative review process for developing its framework, design, and content. This approach involved eliciting feedback and validation from the None and Three Center experts and international advisors. The UK team feedback and validation contributed to the initial scheme of work design based on the plotline for Danielle, with particular attention given to facilitating how teachers could use the game alongside the curriculum material to link activities with each chapter of the game. The integration of None and Three qualitative and quantitative research findings to inform the design and content, and the revised version responsive to the PSHE specialist and safeguarding lead specialist feedback. None and three quantitative survey research findings shape the context for the design of curriculum. For example, it is important for educators to be aware of the ways in which diverse children and young people may experience child abuse and neglect in their lived context, as this can contribute to their existing awareness, understanding, attitudes, and behaviors regarding intimate relationships. The None and Three quantitative survey findings draw the attention of educators to the aspects that have featured in the lived experience of diverse children and young people who participated in the survey. It is important for educators to bear in mind the mental health and well being issues that diverse children and young people may bring to their learning context and hold this awareness when introducing teaching and learning on the sensitive topic of intimate partner violence. Mental health and well being awareness in the learning context facilitates recognition of the importance of integrating support and care for the well being of students within the learning context. For instance, the None and Three quantitative survey findings outlined in the document create awareness of the disaggregated profile of mental health outcomes shared by diverse children and young people who participated in the survey. The None and Three qualitative research findings contributed to the content of the scheme of work. For example, exploring warning signs for an unhealthy, abusive relationship shaped the aims and activities for developing critical awareness of different types of perpetrator behaviors. The scheme of work, design, and content are shaped by an interdisciplinary, youth centered approach that draws on and combines critical pedagogy, creative and performing arts, an ecological framework for human development, and integrative and intercultural therapeutic practice. I embedded critical pedagogy in learning activities to develop critical awareness and enable reflection and action for change within children and young people based on a range of factors, such as recognition of stressors and developing emotional resilience, coping strategies, help seeking behavior, problem solving skills, and care for self and others. I integrated creative and performing arts to enhance self expression, co creation, and multimodal ways of noticing, expressing, and challenging lived realities, and to build awareness, reflection, and potential for transformation. Applying an ecological framework for human development to learning design created space for the exploration of interconnections, interdependence, and independence in challenging inequalities through activities. Integrative and intercultural therapeutic practice is drawn on to facilitate sustainable well being and develop empathy to function and live in constructive and fulfilling ways with and in diversity. The scheme of work covers a range of topics, as you can see here, connected to the qualitative research and the game Danielle. How session plans are developed for each of these topics will be determined by students' age, level of understanding, and stage of development. It is important to select activities that students can handle and think about the themes, aims, differentiated learning outcomes, and key learning points that are provided. The most pertinent key learning aims and outcomes can be selected from what has been offered and prioritized from the suggested scheme of work to shape the focus and content of sessions in the time available. For example, looking at the activity based on the topic of bystander intervention, we invite here students to work in small groups to read one shared case study presenting bystander behavior. Case studies can be developed by the teacher based on bystander behavior demonstrated in chapters 2, 4, and 5 in the provided plot line for the video game Danielle. For example, teacher-generated bystander behavior case studies could draw on chapters 2 and 4 in the plotline for the game Danielle to rewrite and reconstruct interactions between James, Logan and Kieran in the college cafeteria or in the college corridor regarding the relationship between Daniel and James. Or use chapter 4 to rewrite and reconstruct the social media app and I am interaction between Daniel, Emily, James, and Connor regarding the impact of intimate partner violence on Daniel's behavior. Or draw on Hannah's interaction with Daniel regarding Daniel's nude photos that James posted on social media in chapter 5. Students prepare a brief whole class presentation in response to provided questions. For instance, some of the suggested questions are: what type of bystander behavior is demonstrated in the case study? What are the characteristics of bystander intervention, apathy, complicity? Why might some bystanders feel that they cannot intervene? And what could be done to make it easier to intervene? What are students' thoughts about what the bystander is experiencing in the case study? What are their thoughts about what the bystander should or should not do? And what would they do or not do? The case study could also be replaced by one or more short films or documentary films on the session portraying bystander behavior towards young people experiencing IPV as an alternative option to be used as a standalone resource. The main purpose of the activities is to facilitate students' awareness that active bystander intervention or lack of it can have powerful consequences and develop their understanding that early bystander intervention can help reduce the likelihood of negative outcomes for both parties. The activities also help students to reflect on how peer relationships can help the victim and either challenge the perpetrator's behavior or condone it, and help them to examine how peer pressure can change attitudes and behavior towards intimate partner violence. The design and the content of the scheme of work received positive feedback from national curriculum specialists, teacher educators, and teachers in the UK. For example, a PSHE school education lead mentioned, this will be very empowering for young people to be able to speak openly in a safe place. Moving forward, transferability and sustainability of this learning design, when implemented by diverse facilitators with different young people's needs in varied contexts, needs to be assessed to ascertain its effectiveness in retaining adaptable, context-relevant replicability shaped by a variety of lived experiences and realities. In a global context for lifelong learning, it would be good to further explore its integration in global teacher education provision that places an emphasis on collaborative online learning and embedding of well-being, self-care, justice, and social responsibility issues in teaching and learning practice, and relatedly in the wider local, national, and global society and communities. Thank you for listening.